Alrighty guys, and welcome back to this series on advanced exporting integration. This is chapter 2, and here I just want to discuss some preliminaries here in Cinema 4D in regards to versioning and modular workflows with references. Alright, so Cinema 4D has a reference mechanism called Xref that's been around for a few versions now. I think it might have been introduced in 12 or 13. I'm using release 15 here. 16 is coming out very soon, and there is some incredibly amazing things that are happening there that I can't wait to make a few tutorials about once it's released to the public. But with Xrefs, we have the ability to take a scene or a object and do look dev and different things on it in a separate kind of sort of scene, an isolated scene, and then we're able to take the changes of that object and bring them into our master scene or one of our animated shots, and basically be able to manipulate it without affecting the master. And Xref gives us a lot of power. We can lock different parameters down so we don't mess stuff up, or we can completely open up the FBX or the Xref rather, and do some very, very interesting things with it. Alright, so in the interest of explaining with action rather than explaining with just theory, let's go ahead and take our shot that we did for the motion builder training, the motion builder intermediate training, and we will go ahead and turn that shot into a more versioned and more pipeline centric type of style, so that we can be able to have a much easier time managing it. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and do an open here, and we're going to open up, let's see, we already have Testa animation kind of sort of set up, but let's go into our master. So first of all, our directory structure here has changed, and I mentioned in the Motion Builder Intermediate that I was going to discuss this. What I've done is I've created a directory structure for this character that allows me to basically have a reference and have shots. So what I do nowadays is I have a master character, like Testa 2, and I might not name the folder master. For instance, for the animated series that I'm currently in research and development for, called Myria, I have my characters broken down into their own folders, and these are just the characters by themselves with all their look development done. The surfacing, all the textures are applied, all the hair stuff is set up and everything like that. And then what I can do is I can integrate these separate characters using Xrefs into a master shot. In this case, I'm using a test shot to test out some theory and some applications. So Testa being her own little package, we've got her, and then we've got her master shot, which includes all the familiar folders and then some new ones here. So we've got all our phase shift assets, which we used in the phase shift and C4D tutorial to go ahead and create some phase shift animation. We've got our FBXs, which allow us to integrate with Maya and integrate with Motion Builder and do different things in those packages, taking advantage of that multiple apps workflow. We've got Marvelous Designer assets, which later in this tutorial series we'll actually be going over a cloth simulator in Maya. So of late I haven't really been using Marvelous Designer too much, but I think I still will create a tutorial about it regardless, because it is an interesting clothing package. MDD cache files or point cache files from Lightwave allow us to transfer animations between animation packages. Alembic has pretty much superseded that in the industry. However, Marvelous Designer doesn't support Alembic yet, so we have to go through the arduous task of doing different things with MDD point caches. So that folder is there for Marvelous Designer integration and any integration with any older packages that don't support a limit. OBGL files naturally, and then we've also got some references for Testa as well, so we include all our reference stuff here. And then I've also created a C4D folder for C4D. So as I use different applications, I create folders for them, and they'll start to populate. Mudbox might be here eventually, and then ZBrush. We haven't done anything in ZBrush for this particular character, although I do have some training where we did use ZBrush for the original Testa character. Alright, so under the C4D folder, we've got our texture folder, which includes our textures, and then we've got all our iterations of Testa. In particular, we've got this important file called Testa Edit, which is our main editor version of Testa. So opening this up, we'll see that we've got Testa, and she's got a hair sim that I was testing out for a certain animation that I might be doing eventually. We also have, we've got her skirt, we've got her shirt, we've got her in general. We've textured her, so we've done our look development and surfacing as far as putting lights into the scene and seeing what her textures look like, and working on the bump and working on the eyes and different things. So this is what look development mainly consists of, us going through and making sure our characters are nicely textured and making sure everything looks good. So this look development process is kind of sort of a critical thing, and right now we kind of sort of have our textures applied directly to our character as tags here, and they're inextricably linked to the polygons in a very specific way here in Cinema 4D, a very proprietary type of way. A new application that I will be showing a little bit later, probably this month, kind of sort of takes care of that whole thing and really revolutionizes this look development workflow. But here in Cinema, this is the extent of our look development. So here's our problem. We want to be able to take this character who has this beautiful look development, all this rigging done, this hair system is nice and ready to go for any dynamics we might do on an animation later. We want to take this character, and what we don't want to do is we don't want to actually copy her, do a Control-C, open up another scene, and paste her in, and have all these assets just be duplicated and recreated in the other scene. The reason why we don't want to do that is because if we do that, then if we make changes to this scene, if we add wings to her, or add tassels that flutter on her dress, or add some new dynamic systems here, we have to basically redo that in every scene that we use this character in. And if we use this character in multiple shots in our project, and I highly recommend you break your shots into very divisible, very easy to use pieces, so that it's very easy for you to manipulate them in various different packages. If we go with that 100 shot, 20 shot, 15 shot type sort of workflow, then the issue is we want to be able to reuse Testa as she stands right here in multiple shots, and that way if we make changes to the master, it replicates to all 20 shots. So to do that, we can use Xrefs. So let's go ahead and open up our scene. So we've got our Testa animation scene, and in here we've got a CD4D folder, and that folder is going to have our animation. Alright, so this is the shot that we want to integrate her in. She's been called for in the script to be in this shot to do a specific thing. In this particular case, she's going to a table, and she's going to pick up a katana, and she's going to do a flip. Alright, so if we open up this shot, we can see that in fact we have her doing the action that the director or whatever specified for her to do. We have her picking up her katana, and we have her doing this flip. Okay, so the katana is a one-shot piece. We might not need that for an asset, although in a studio type pipeline, at least from what I've been reading, this asset too might be versioned, and it might also be, you know, re-edited by, like, say, another modeler. Let's say you're the animator, and, you know, the modeler decides to add some sort of modular functionality using cloners or something like that that allows this blade to just extend out in a mechanical type fashion. All right. Well, you know, that new rig and that new system and all the user data and Espresso that's required to do that, that allows you to easily animate that, is in the master Kitana file. And you're using basically a copied Kitana version. So that version of that information doesn't make it to you. And as an animator, you can't use that information now. You basically have to go onto the server or go onto your hard drive, find that Kitana and basically copy it in. Without deleting this Kitana, because then you need to also bake the animation onto the new Kitana before you can delete this old asset, and that just takes time. That's like 10 minutes that you've wasted doing that, when in fact if you had used an Xref, that animation data would have just made it into this scene perfectly. So for Testa, we're going to go ahead and change her up. So instead of using this baked copy of Testa, we're going to go ahead and hit Shift C here, which Shift C brings up this kind of sort of terminal dialogue command kind of sort of thing, and this actually gives you very quick access to the whole of C4D's command system. So you can type in anything in here, like the knife tool or one of the sculpting brushes, like say the push brush. I think the push, no, that's a hair tool. I think it's the pull brush. There we go. And you can grab that and you can pull vertices and stuff like that. But we're going to go ahead and grab an Xref, because I can never remember where Xrefs actually are in the menus. So with an Xref, what we can do is we can come over here to our properties and we can figure out what we want our reference to be. So our reference is going to be the Testa edit project. So come over here, come to Testa 2, go into our master, go into Cinema 4D and grab our Testa edit. And so now what that Xref has done is it has brought in that copy of the project as a reference. If that project changes, this whole entire reference will change. And thus we've got that beautiful versioning workflow. So now what we can do is we can actually take our original Testa 2 that was just a copy instead of a reference, and we can go ahead and take this retarget tag and we can actually put it on the Xref version of her hips instead. So we'll just drag this up and we can go ahead and delete the other Testa. And so now what we have is a situation where now the Xref should follow our animation. Let's go ahead and bring the Xref down. Let's go ahead and rename it to Testa Xref so we know what kind of Xref it is, what it's referencing. And in the Xref properties, let's go ahead and change a few things. So we can use this Xref as a master reference that is uneditable if we wanted to. But we can also use it as kind of sort of a loose reference. So if we go into our options, and bring them over here, we can actually change it so that we can actually modify different parameters of this Xref. So we can delete stuff out the hierarchy, we can change the points, change the PSR, we can give ourselves access to user data, give ourselves access to the parameters. Giving ourselves access to parameters will actually allow us to change the materials of the reference, but they'll stay the same in the master. So we can give her different texture deformations, like we can animate this chest texture so that a blood spot starts to form there. if she gets shot, you know, and do an animated texture that way. Okay, so for this reference, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go ahead and attach her hips to that. So make the Testa to Xref hips the target, and now the Xref also follows the animation. So now we have a referenced file that is following our animation, and it gives us the benefits of being able to send this file out to another animator who might be better at doing some of the dynamic stuff. We can work on just animating out the basics, and we can have a Maya animator do our hair and our cloth, or have a Houdini animator do our particles, and all that stuff can get integrated very, very, very nicely. Awesome. So this series is about the Alembic format and about using some of these new technologies to be able to take our workflow to the next level. So even though this is really great and we've got her nice and Xref'd out, let's say that there was a really cool program that allowed us to do some really amazing deformations. Let's call it like Glory 3D or something like that, and it has like some really amazing muscle deformers and different things like that that just automate your ability to be able to deform areas of like a female rig or a character or something like that. So you wanna import an Alembic from that program, and you want to use it in this scene with the textures intact and all of that. But you want to use it with this reference so that you can edit the reference later. Well, an interesting technique that you could use is you could actually drive this character with the Alembic using some tools that we already have here in Cinema 4D that we've already covered. Now, I can't take complete credit for the actual technique that's used to actually drive the Alembics. I have to give that credit to Brian Hogan. He did a tutorial called Baking Alembics to Point Caches that you can look up on Vimeo or look up on the web. Google search should turn up real quick. That shows you how to actually take an Alembic and break it back down into a normal object here in Cinema 4D while keeping the animations intact, so that you can continue to texture it and, you know, extract out the selection tags from it and different things like that. In this particular case, I'm going to do a little bit of a modification on the technique, and I'm also going to show you a few advanced ways that technique can be used a little bit later in this tutorial series to do some very, very interesting things out of Maya. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and merge in our Alembic file. Alright, and once she's merged in, give it a couple of seconds to think. Alright, we can go ahead and keep the defaults. If you know your frame rate is a little bit different, then you can go ahead and change that. But yeah, we've got our Alembic file in here now. And so what we want to do is we want to add a pose morph tag to our mesh. So we've used this tag before to do facial animation stuff using morph meshes from DAZ to go ahead and drive our character animations. But we can also use it here to go ahead and take the Alembic mesh and drive this mesh with it. So what we're going to want to do is set this pose morph cache to points. We're going to want to go into the tag, and we're going to want to go ahead and delete the pose that it creates by default. Then we can drag our Alembic in there as a pose, and it's going to ask us if we want to use absolute or relative, and we want to use absolute, so we need to keep this file in our hierarchy, but you know, it'll drive a little bit faster. We won't have to use a relative. So The other thing we want to do here is we want to go to the basic tag properties here. We want to go ahead and change this to animation and initial. That's going to take care of some of the issues we have as far as the animation properly following our character. Now it's still messed up. We're going to take care of a little bit of that. Let's go to our tag and let's go ahead and change it to animate. It has to be changed to animate in order to follow the animation perfectly. Alright, and now we've still got just a few more things to do to get this right. We need to go ahead and add a morph deformer. Alright, and what we want to do is we want to actually add the morph deformer after the skin deformer. That way the skin deformer happens first. This is going to deform our bones in case we do some bone animation, which would be important to have the shirt and the skirt actually follow her. You know, and then we would, that's it. So now the Alembic cache is actually driving our character. We can test this out for sure by actually deleting the motion builder version of the skeleton. And so now that skeleton isn't being driven anymore by the actual motion builder file. In fact, just to make sure it's not being driven, we can actually delete the retarget tag as well. And so now the mesh itself is actually being driven by the Alembic cache. That's incredible. And we kept our textures. We can turn off the stoplights for the Alembic cache, and that'll get rid of our ability to render it, you know, so it'll be hidden. Could also use a compositing tag to do that as well, which might actually be a little bit nicer. So turn it off, make sure it's not seen by cameras, rays, whatever. Make sure everything about it is turned off. You know, and now we can turn it back on and make sure it doesn't cast or receive any shadows. Basically turn everything about it off. But it's still in the scene and it's still driving the character. It's really great. Awesome. So that pretty much takes care of that, and that takes care of my little spiel about versioning and modular workflow. In the next tutorial, where I actually take this a little bit, we'll actually do a little bit more of an advanced example of, you know, why this is so great. We're actually going to go ahead and recreate our skirt, and we're going to use a cloth system in Maya, a really awesome production ready cloth system, to go ahead and actually do a more realistic cloth simulation. And we'll bring that back into Alembic, and we'll use some of this this cool functionality to be able to really texture that skirt really nicely, and basically bring it back in here to complete the scene. Alrighty. So I will see you guys in the next one. Take care.